Our top story now, a meeting of foreign ministers of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, that's SAARC countries, which was slated to be held on Saturday in New York, has been cancelled. Now, it's been learned from reliable sources that Pakistan wanted the Taliban to represent Afghanistan in this SAARC meet, and it was Nepal that was the host of the meet, which is held annually on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, and they did not want to host the Taliban. Let's go across to Kadambini now for more. Kadambini, give us more details of this and the cancellation of the SAARC meet.
Well, Gargi, this is a tradition that an informal meet is held on the sidelines of UNGA of SAARC foreign ministers every year whenever the UNGA happens. But this time, while Nepal is the chair of SAARC this year, it had invited, and it is not clear whether it had invited the Afghanistan envoy to UN, who's already there, of the previous government, or not. But what we are learning from sources is that Pakistan insisted that the previous government's officials not be there, and instead of that, there should be an empty chair. So, and he also, Pakistan also insisted that the Taliban should get some sort of representation in this SAARC meeting, which happens. But the member states shot it down because they said it is not feasible, as most of the countries of the world have not recognized Taliban as the official government in Afghanistan, and it won't be right to do that. Apart from that, Afghanistan government has not even applied to UN for any credentials. So this empty chair did not go down well with other nations, and they have shot down this Pakistan's insistence that in the SAARC meeting, Taliban should also be there. So at the moment, because there is no concurrence about this, so a note verbal was sent to the member nations saying that this meeting is being cancelled. So at the moment, there is no meeting of SAARC foreign ministers at the sidelines of UNGA. Gargi?
All right, so Kadambini, very interesting that SAARC continued to insist. So you're saying that even though, there were attempts made to arrive at a consensus, Pakistan continued to insist on the Taliban being present at this meeting?
Right, Gargi. Pakistan kept insisting, but other member nations did not agree to it. We know that on 15th of August, the Taliban took over Afghanistan by force, and we have also seen that it has not honored any of the conditions which were put on. It had agreed to in Doha deal, but Pakistan kept insisting about this, that Taliban should be represented or there should be an empty chair. But this was not agreed upon by other member nations of the SAARC country. So the meeting itself was cancelled.
All right, Kadambini, thanks so much for joining us with all those details. Now, let's talk of the Prime Minister's program. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be travelling to the United States today till the 26th. His hectic schedule includes bilaterals with President Biden, the first in-person Quad Leaders Summit, and a much-anticipated address to the UN General Assembly. The Prime Minister will also be meeting US Vice President Kamala Harris for the first time during this trip, which will be then followed by the Quad Summit, which are scheduled on the 24th. On the 25th, the Prime Minister will be the first speaker at the UN General Assembly. The Prime Minister will also meet his Australian and Japanese counterparts. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken to the French President Emmanuel Macron. He tweeted, "I spoke with my friend President Emmanuel Macron on the situation in Afghanistan. We also discussed closer collaboration between India and France in the Indo-Pacific. We place great value on our strategic partnership with France, including in the UNSC." On his part, the French President tweeted about as you can see there, a sentence in Hindi, "Namaste Priya Sathi, Priya Mitra. Thank you for reaffirming the importance of our strategic partnership. India and France are strongly committed to making the Indo-Pacific an area of cooperation and shared values. We will continue to build on this." Now, addressing the United Nations General Assembly, US President Joe Biden defended the US pullout from Afghanistan, calling it a relentless war which had now been replaced by relentless diplomacy. He also talked about the significance of the Quad grouping as the world continues to battle COVID and climate change.
We've ended 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan. And as we close this period of relentless war, we're opening a new era of relentless diplomacy, of using the power of our development aid to invest in new ways of lifting people up around the world. We elevated the Quad partnership among Australia, India, Japan, and the United States to take on challenges ranging from health security to climate, to emerging technology. The extreme weather events that we have seen in every part of the world, and you all know it and feel it, represent what the Secretary General has rightly called Code Red for humanity. To keep within our reach the vital goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, every nation needs to bring their highest possible ambitions to the table when we meet in Glasgow for COP26. And then have to keep raising our collective ambition.
In other news, India has sent a strong message to the United Kingdom a day after the UK said that fully vaccinated Indians would continue to have to self-isolate for 10 days if they travel to the UK. India has called UK's stand discriminatory and warned of reciprocal action.
Amid the growing furor over the UK's decision to consider those who have received both doses of Covishield as unvaccinated and requiring them to self-isolate for 10 days, India has made it clear that it considers this policy discriminatory and will reciprocate in kind if required.
The basic issue is that here is a vaccine Covishield, which is a licensed product of a UK company, manufactured in India, of which we have supplied 5 million doses to the UK at the request of the government of the UK. We understand that this has been used in the national health system. And therefore, non-recognition of Covishield is a discriminatory policy. The Honourable External Affairs Minister, from what I understand, has raised this issue strongly with his counterpart, the new Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom. If we don't get satisfaction, we would be within our rights to impose reciprocal measures.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also tweeted about discussing the matter with the British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss on the sidelines of the high-level 76th session of the UN General Assembly. As criticism intensifies, with Congress leaders Jairam Ramesh saying that UK's decision smacks of racism and Shashi Tharoor calling it offensive and discriminatory, what has come as a shot in the arm for India is the United States' announcement of new relaxations for foreign travellers. From the 1st of November, there will be no restrictions on travel to the US for fully vaccinated foreign visitors. The US CDC has clarified that this includes all vaccines that have been approved for emergency use by the WHO, which means Covishield vaccinated Indians will be allowed, but for now not those who have received the other India-made vaccine, Covaxin. With UK's new rules coming into effect from next month and thousands of Indians waiting impatiently for travel restrictions to ease, India clearly is hoping for an early resolution to the issue. An NDTV Bureau Report.
In other news now from Uttar Pradesh, and a day after Narendra Giri, the head of a top religious body, Akhil Bharatiya Akhada Parishad, was found dead in Prayagraj. His closest disciple was arrested. The police filed an FIR against Anand Giri, who was Narendra Giri's protege until they fell out in May and then patched up again. Kamal Khan and Alok Pandey report.
High-profile visits to Prayagraj by UP's top politicians to mourn the alleged death by suicide of Mahant Narendra Giri, the head of the Akhada Parishad, India's largest body of saints. Already a war of words has broken out on allegations of whether there was wrongdoing behind the death.
पूरा देश सच्चाई जानना चाहता है, साधु संत सच्चाई जानना चाहते हैं कि आखिरकार क्या हुआ है, किन परिस्थितियों में ऐसी घटना घटी।
कल की घटना को लेकर के बहुत सारे साक्ष्य कलेक्ट किए गए हैं। पुलिस की एक टीम जो यहाँ के एडीजी जोन, आईजी रेंज और डीआईजी प्रयागराज एक साथ मिलकर के टीम वर्क के साथ इस कार्यक्रम को आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं। एक एक घटना का पर्दाफाश होगा, दोषी अवश्य सजा पाएगा।
The UP police has arrested this man, Anand Giri, a protege of the deceased Akhada Parishad head till a few months ago, when he was expelled by the dead seer over allegations of fraud and financial mismanagement. Anand Giri had also accused Narendra Giri of fraud.
मैं सच या झूठ बोल रहा हूं, उसके लिए चाहे तो सरकार की मदद लेकर के नार्कोटिक टेस्ट भी मेरा कराया जा सकता है।
But withdrew his allegations.
कान पकड़ करके अपनी सारी गलतियों की सबसे पहले माफी मांगता हूं और क्षमा मांगता हूं यहाँ से।
This video from a patch up a few days later showed Anand Giri seeking forgiveness at the feet of his mentor. but the police suspect it was short-lived. The FIR against Anand Giri was filed by a colleague of Mahant Narendra Giri, the seer who died by suicide. It alleges that Narendra Giri had confided in this colleague multiple times that Anand Giri was harassing him, but it does not say how. Two other disciples have been detained for questioning, Sandeep Tiwari and Adya Tiwari. Both of them stayed with Narendra Giri. The police said the arrests are based on a suicide note found near Narendra Giri's body, which mentioned Anand Giri and the two other people. The note said the three were harassing Narendra Giri. Police sources say the Akhada Parishad owns property worth crores in Prayagraj and elsewhere in the country, and financial matters could have played a part in the top seer's suicide. There was tension in the Parishad over who would succeed Narendra Giri, police sources have claimed. With elections early next year and with Hindutva emerging as a main campaign pivot for the BJP, there will be pressure on the UP government to come up with answers to the death of this prominent Hindu saint. With Kamal Khan, Rajesh Gupta and Nitin Gupta, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
Meanwhile, Anand Giri has called it a conspiracy and alleged murder. He denied there was any dispute.
ये बहुत बड़ा षड्यंत्र है। हम गुरु शिष्य के बीच में कभी कोई विवाद नहीं रहा। जिन लोगों ने सीधे तौर पे गुरुजी को ब्लैकमेल करके जो पैसा कमाया, उन लोगों की साजिश है और उस साजिश के तहत उनकी हत्या हुई है। उन्हीं की हत्या में जानबूझ करके मेरे नाम का आना ये षड्यंत्र का स्पष्ट रूप है।
In other news now, former Union Minister Babul Supriyo, who moved from the BJP to the Trinamool Congress in the past few days, reiterated that he wants to be part of a team that embraces him warmly and makes him part of the playing 11. Once again, deploying a sports metaphor, the Bollywood singer turned politician's move has reportedly created a buzz in West Bengal political circles. Days after his move, West Bengal BJP chief Dilip Ghosh was replaced. This has been perceived as a move to stem any more hemorrhaging in the state party unit.
आपने पहले ही टर्म सेट कर दिए कि भाई मुझे तो प्लेइंग 11 में खेलना है, यानी कि या तो आप सांसद बना दिए जाएं या आप मंत्री बना दिए जाएं।
नहीं, ऐसा देखिए, ऐसा क्या है, ऐसे अटकलें तो लगाए जाएंगे। ये तो अगर नहीं होगा तो ब्रेकिंग न्यूज कैसे बनेगी? आज सुबह से मुझे सुनिए ना, सुबह से
आप ही ने बोला कि मुझे प्लेइंग 11 में रहना है, मुझे बेंच पे नहीं बैठना।
प्लेइंग 11 में रहना नहीं, प्लेइंग 11 में रहना है। मैं आप इसको इसलिए बताना चाहता हूं कि अगर कहीं मुझे लगे कि मुझे प्लेइंग 11 में नहीं हूं, जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, जो गोल, जो चीज मैं कर सकता हूं, शायद मैं साबित भी कर चुका हूं, वो रिकॉग्निशन मुझे नहीं मिल रही है। कहीं पे जिंदगी में बॉटल नेक आ रही है। देखिए, आप जो चीज करते हैं ना, वही आपकी जिंदगी बन जाती है। हाँ। आप फुटबॉल खेलते हैं तो वही आपका लाइफ होता है। आप सुबह से, मैं भी बहुत खेल चुका हूँ, आप जिम में जाते हैं, प्रैक्टिस करते हैं, वापस आते हैं, सोते हैं, उसी के डाइट करते हैं, फिर शाम को जाते हैं मैच खेलने के लिए। हाँ। तो यही है। और जब बार्सिलोना में मेसी था तो क्या डिड ही वांट टू लीव बार्सिलोना? He was, the situation was so that he cried during the press conference, but he went to PSG. So now you are saying that when he plays for PSG, is he expected to score against Barcelona, or is he going to stand still in front of the goal because he needs to be loyal to his ex team and his only team, which had spotted him at a very young age, gave him the human growth hormones and everything else. His immune system and everything was weak. So they actually transformed him, gave him everything, whatever he needed, and made him into Messi. So is he now going to stand in front of the goal and not score a goal against? So whatever I do at a given point of time, I do it wholeheartedly, and I am not deleting any post or anything that is there on my social media. I'm not doing anything. I do not have a social media team now. I'm not doing anything that I said at a
जो पुराना कह दिया वो कह दिया, वो उस समय की जरूरत थी,
जो कह दिया वो कह दिया। बहुत लोग उसे डिग अप कर रहे हैं, करने दीजिए, वो उनकी रुचि है। मैं भी तो डिग अप कर सकता हूँ, कि मेरे बारे में तृणमूल कांग्रेस से पहले क्या क्या कह चुके हैं। बट जो जिनको पास्ट में रहना है वो पास्ट में रहे। I see a good future. I can sing because she loves music, so I can keep on singing. अच्छी बात है।
With that, time for us to slip into a short break. Coming up on the other side, how 3 cases of Delta Plus variants have been detected in Mizoram. We'll get to the details. Welcome back. News from the Northeast now. 3 cases of Delta Plus variants have been detected from Mizoram. The state senior health official has said of the 350 samples sent for genome sequencing, 3 returned positive for the genome sequencing. The 350 samples were sent to the National Institute of Biomedical Genomics in Bengal's Kalyani in August. Of the samples that were confirmed to be the Delta Plus variant, 2 were from patients in the state's Champai district and 1 from a patient in the Kolasib district. 70 samples were confirmed to be from the Delta lineage and are being further studied. For the past fortnight, Mizoram has been recording over 1,000 cases a day with an average positivity rate of over 15%, one of the highest in the country. Delhi Chief Minister and Aam Aadmi Party leader Arvind Kejriwal visited Goa to bolster his party's prospects in the state, which goes to polls early next year. Kejriwal made it clear that unemployment and jobs for locals is going to be a key issue for the Aam Aadmi Party.
मैंने सुना है सावंत साहब ने अनाउंस किया कि वो डोर स्टेप डिलीवरी ऑफ सर्विसेज शुरू करेंगे। मुझे बहुत खुशी हुई, पर मेरा एक कहना है कि जो दिल्ली में काम हो रहे हैं वो उसको कॉपी कर रहे हैं, तो जब ओरिजिनल अवेलेबल है तो डुप्लीकेट की क्या जरूरत है?
The Delhi Chief Minister setting the tone for his party's election campaign in Goa. Kejriwal visited a temple and a church, visits that drew a lot of attention. The key announcement, unemployment benefits of rupees 3,000 a month and allowances of rupees 5,000 for families dependent on tourism and mining if the Aam Aadmi Party comes to power.
Private jobs are not reserved for Goans. We will bring a law to reserve 80% of the private jobs also for Goan youth.
Kejriwal's 2-day visit coincided with the BJP's Goa in charge Devendra Fadnavis also being in Goa.
काँग्रेसची अवस्था अत्यंत वाईट आहे. अलीकडच्याच काळामध्ये आप पक्षाने देखील बऱ्यापैकी बॅनर पोस्टर लावले आहेत. राज्य चालवायला, देश चालवायला विचार लागतो, नीती लागते, रीती लागते. अराजकतेने देश चालू शकत नाही.
The Congress has repeatedly accused the Aam Aadmi Party of helping the BJP. But in a state where most of its own MLAs went to the BJP, it may find it difficult to explain that charge.
I remember last election in Goa, Mr. Kejriwal and his half of his cabinet was in Goa repeating exactly what they are saying. So I don't want to comment on a party which is, let them do what they have.
Political analysts say Goa fits perfectly into the Aam Aadmi Party's scheme of things. With the Congress depleted this time, it will have to work really hard to match its earlier performance, and the Aam Aadmi Party's gains are more likely to come at the cost of the Congress than the BJP. With Sonakshi Chakrabarti in New Delhi, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
With that, time for us to slip into a short break. Coming up on the other side, all the IPL news in Turning Point. Stay with us.
Well, I'm joined at this hour by my guest, Vijay Lokpalli. He is the consulting editor of Sportstar. We are also joined by Anis Sajan, former mentor of Delhi Bulls, and the two fans of the two teams, Clinton, and I can see a smiling Ronak there. Ronak, did you expect this end to the match?
No way. I mean, till the 18th over, I think the match was gone. I think that over given to Parag itself was a turning point. But I think we should declare Punjab versus Rajasthan as the official entertaining rivalry of IPL, because every time these two teams play, the match is not over till it's over. One stat which I saw which made me optimistic was that whenever KL Rahul and Mayank Agarwal have had a 100+ partnership, they've always lost the match. So it seemed that Rajasthan Royals really wanted Mayank and Rahul to reach that 100 mark so that they would be assured of a victory. But on another note, tremendous last over by Kartik Tyagi. I think under that pressure for a young bowler to defend 4 runs against Nicholas Pooran and Aiden Markram, I think hats off to Rajasthan Royals. A lot of worries in the team, but today I'll take this win, especially from where we were in the second half of the match.
Clinton, it's interesting that Ronak is saying that whenever Rahul and Mayank score a 100-run partnership, their team loses. But once again, Punjab choking in the end, they were very, very nicely set up with that 120-run stand.
This just exposed our weak middle order, very vulnerable middle order, which everyone has been talking about. 10 runs from 15 balls with 8 wickets in hand. 10 out of 10 times the team batting would win it. But I'm out of words, absolutely gutted, and I absolutely have no words for what happened today.
Right, and as a fan, you definitely will be very, very sad after this loss. Vijay, I'll have to ask you about this side Punjab. They have phenomenal performers. They have KL Rahul. Mayank Agarwal showed that he was hungry for runs, having been in the sidelines in Indian cricket for so long. But they were once again not able to cross the finish line. Why is Punjab choking time and again?
Rika, phenomenal players and phenomenal losers, because if you have to tell the world how to lose a game, Punjab can be the best team to showcase. I mean, they have lost in the past also, game they should have wrapped up. And here again, it's from 120 for no loss, you go on to lose the game. It is a case study, if you're a coach, to tell your students that you have to finish the game. You have to learn to finish the game. So here, KL Rahul, Mayank, Martin and Pooran, they are equally guilty of not staying till the end, because for a new batsman who will come in, who walks in under pressure, and it's not easy always to go and collect the first ball. So here it's a collective failure, and Kumble must be a gutted person in the dugout. I mean, we could see he was so disappointed, and every Punjab supporter, no doubt. But yes, credit to Rajasthan Royals, they fought, and Tyagi for that wonderful over. I mean, he knew what he had to bowl. And the line which he bowled has to be appreciated, because he could have any ball could have been hit for a 4 or a 6 or whatever. But this was Punjab. I'll hold them responsible. No one else, for losing the game from such a strong position.
Anis, coming to you, would you say to give that last over to Kartik Tyagi, the youngster, when there were several others in the team, it was a bit of a gamble by Sanju Samson?
You can say that now, Rika, but first the credit has to go to Mustafizur Rahman, who gave only 4 runs, and also some sort of a weird sort of an umpiring. I'm not taking away anything from RR, but a couple of beamers from Morris were not given as no balls.
Right.
And then there were some balls which were, according to me, wide, but nonetheless, that's the beauty of the game. But you asked me about Tyagi. Hats off to this bowler who bowled this excellent over, and to keep his nerve against experienced players like even Deepak Hooda has played enough cricket, as well as Pooran, and win the match. So if you have to pick one man of the match, he won the game for them in this last 2 overs, rather last over.
Right, he did win the game for Rajasthan. But talking about bowlers, one man we have to speak about tonight is Arshdeep Singh. He picked up a 5-wicket haul, which is equivalent to scoring 100 in any form of the game. Vijay, coming back to you, he set it up very nicely for Kings 11 Punjab, didn't he?
Yes, and he, Rika, we've been hearing about this boy. He's very committed. It's very easy for me to say committed, because the thing is, he follows instructions. That is more important. I mean, and it's very difficult when a captain tells you to bowl a certain line and length, and for you to stick to it, you have to be an excellent performer, and he has tuned himself. I mean, he has prepared himself to bowl these difficult overs. He has done it in the earlier editions of the IPL also, that he can, like a spinner has to be large-hearted. He should be able to take the beating. So that's what Arshdeep has done. And I mean, I can tell you that Kumble rates him very high. He is one of his trusted performers. He showed it tonight, but unfortunately ended up on the losing side. But it's fine, it's a lesson for the team. But Arshdeep can take a lot of confidence from this game.
Coming back to you, Anis, we were looking at some stats that Anil Kumble is the only other person to have taken a 5-wicket haul against Rajasthan Royals, and Arshdeep, who's mentored by Anil Kumble in Kings 11 Punjab, has achieved that feat. Do you see this boy breaking into the India ranks soon?
Well, I would love to, because one is a left armer. India does not have such a big left arm tank like how we have right armers. I would be more than happy to see him coming. But I just wanted to add one line which the other panelists also mentioned, that there is a saying of Shah Rukh Khan which is famous, that हार के जीतने वाले को बाजीगर कहते हैं. I would put it for Punjab, जीती हुई मैच को हारना को Punjab Kings. Time and again they keep on doing this.
That's what we've been discussing as to how Punjab's been choking time and again, and it's really sad for Captain KL Rahul. He's been a phenomenal performer, and perhaps in the orange cap race, he's now also very high. I'll have to check the orange cap race right now. But Anis, coming back to you and talking about another left armour who didn't feature in today's clash, Tabriz Shamshi, who's the top T20 spinner. Rajasthan Royals didn't pick him, yet won the match. Would you say that again was a gamble?
Well, now it would have been a wise decision that they did not pick him, but I have always believed that Chinaman spinners are match winners. And we know what Tabriz Shamsi has done. That's why he's the #1 spinner in the world.
Ronak, going back to you, now that the team has come back with a win, they are in the 5th place. Do you see that there is a right chance that they might break into the top 4 and even go further?
Yes, definitely. I think if you would have asked me at the start of the season that after 8 games we would be tied with Mumbai Indians on 8 points, and the net run rate also is not that great, so we could have easily been 4th, I would have happily taken that. I think the foreign replacements that we've had are really, really good as compared to the other teams, because all of them are in form. As Mr. Anis mentioned, that Tabriz Shamsi is the #1 World T20 bowler. Evan Lewis has been in form in CPL. Liam Livingstone showed today that he can replicate his form of the 100 in the IPL as well. And Fizz again has been excellent. So I think we have the right team, and we've seen Mahipal Lomrar also shown his attacking prowess. If we have a few bowlers back in form like Morris and maybe a Tewatia, I think we can push for a top 4 spot and challenge the top teams like CSK and Delhi.
What would it take for Punjab to make a turnaround? Vijay, I may come to you and ask you this question, because they also look like a good team but unable to break through to the top half.
They begin every tournament on a high note. I mean, they promise so much. They have a fantastic support staff, and what better coach than Anil Kumble to guide them, and somebody like KL Rahul, who might tomorrow go on to become the India captain. So he has it in him. He's shown it also. But they don't have a finisher. I mean, every time I realize that they lack a finisher. So they will have to put this responsibility on somebody in the middle order and tell him that, look, whatever the condition, you'll have to hang in and finish the game. It could be Pooran, it could be Markram.
In fact, today Pooran and Markram tried to finish it, but again the weakness of their middle order showed, and they were unable to get over the finish line despite having set up the match so beautifully with 120 for no loss at the end of 10th over. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me on the broadcast.
Welcome back. The Enforcement Directorate has initiated a money laundering probe after the seizure of 3,000 kilograms of heroin from Gujarat port. It's estimated to be worth a whopping 21,000 crore rupees.
The Department of Revenue Intelligence has recorded what's said to be the largest drug haul. 3 tons of heroin worth over 20,000 crore rupees from Mundra port in Gujarat, which has alarmed other agencies as well. This heroin is from Afghanistan, according to the DRI officials, who say the consignment was routed through Iran's Bandar Abbas port to Mundra port in Gujarat in the guise of talcum powder.
कुछ 2 कंसाइनमेंट जो कि दरियाई मार्ग से हिंदुस्तान में आ रहे हैं और उस दोनों कंसाइनमेंट के अंदर ड्रग्स है, ऐसी एक इंटेलिजेंस मिली थी। उस फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन के बाद पता चला कि वो दोनों कंसाइनमेंट के अंदर 20 किलो की जो एक बड़ी बैग रहती है, बड़ी बैग के अंदर 3 लेयर में ये ड्रग्स भेजा गया था जो कि हेरोइन था।
Now the Enforcement Directorate has initiated a money laundering probe. The seizure has triggered a nationwide hunt. A Vijayawada-based couple has been arrested on September 18th by the DRI Chennai team, and they have been taken into custody. The consignment's bill of entry had the company's name. Further investigation is underway. However, the Andhra Pradesh police says that their investigation shows the heroin was intended for Delhi and not Vijayawada.
आखिर क्या कारण है कि पिछले कुछ वर्षों में मादक पदार्थों यानी ड्रग्स की तस्करी करने वालों का सबसे प्रिय रास्ता गुजरात हो गया?
NDTV Bureau Report.
Prime Minister Modi's Swachh Bharat initiative was driving for an open defecation-free India by building thousands of toilets across the country. But what happens when there is a toilet but no house to live in? A family in the Mehboob district of Telangana, Mehboob Nagar district of Telangana, has been living inside a toilet, cooking, sleeping there as they have no house.
This toilet, built by the government for economically weaker sections, has turned into a home for Sujata and her 2 children. A stone slab placed over the commode serves as a platform on which she cooks. There is a gas cylinder placed next to it. So also a few vessels, clothes and other meager belongings.
నా పేరు సుజాత ఎప్పుడు ఇక్కడనే ఉంటున్నాం వాన ఇండ్లు ఉలిపోయిందంటే సర్పంచులు ఎవరు పట్టించుకోరు ఈ ఊళ్ళో ఇంట్లోనే ఉంటున్నాం ఇంట్లోనే వర్షం పడితే పిల్లలు వండుకుంటారు మేము కూర్చుంటాం ఇంకా వర్షం వెళ్చినాక మళ్ళీ తెల్లారినాక వండుకుంటాం సార్ మేము ఇంట్లో ఎమ్మెల్యే ఎవరు రాలేదు ఎవరు చూసిపోలే ఇట్లా చూసిపోలే
Sujata's husband had died 6 years ago. 2 years ago, their home was washed away in rains, after which they had nowhere to go and made this toilet their home.
సంసారం చేస్తుంది 2 పిల్లలతోని భర్త చనిపోయిండు అత్త 2 పిల్లలు ఆమె సంసారం చేస్తుంది కానీ మీకు దయచేసి ఈమెనన్నా చూసి ఎస్సీలకు ఇంత ఇండ్లు గవర్నమెంట్ నుండి సాయంగా ఇవ్వాలని కోరుతున్నాను.
వానకు నీళ్ళకు లేచి కూర్చుంటున్నారు సార్ తెల్లారు నిద్ర లేదల్ల కంటికి పిల్లలు ఇద్దరు పెట్టుకొని పండుకుంటుంది ఇంత ఇల్లు కట్టి దానికి ఓట్లు మీకు వేస్తారు.
The TRS government had announced double bedroom houses for the poor before the elections. Just last month they launched the Dalit Bandhu scheme by which every scheduled caste family is to get 10 lakh rupees. Sujata has not got the benefit of either of these schemes. The Mehboob Nagar collector says the government had paid compensation last year after rains, but Sujata had not got her house repaired. Now land has been sanctioned for a small house for the family. Uma Sudhir, NDTV.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat. Our top story, a meeting of foreign ministers of SAARC countries, which was slated to be held on Saturday in New York, has now been cancelled. It's learned from reliable sources that Pakistan wanted the Taliban to represent Afghanistan in the SAARC meet. India, along with some other members, objected to the proposal, and due to lack of consensus or concurrence, the meeting was cancelled. Nepal was the host of the meet, which is annually held on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Earlier, we spoke to Kadambani for more details.
This is a tradition that an informal meet is held on the sidelines of UNGA of SAARC foreign ministers every year whenever the UNGA happens. But this time, while Nepal is the chair of SAARC this year, it had invited, and it is not clear whether it had invited the Afghanistan envoy to UN, who's already there, of the previous government or not. But what we are learning from sources is that Pakistan insisted that the previous government's officials not be there, and instead of that there should be an empty chair. So, and he also, Pakistan also insisted that the Taliban should get some sort of representation in this SAARC meeting, which happens. But the member states shot it down because they said it is not feasible, as most of the countries of the world have not recognized Taliban as the official government in Afghanistan, and it won't be right to do that. Apart from that, Afghanistan government has not even applied to UN for any credentials. So this empty chair did not go down well with other nations, and they have shot down this Pakistan's insistence that in the SAARC meeting, Taliban should also be there. So at the moment, because there is no concurrence about this, so a note verbal was sent to the member nation saying that this meeting is being cancelled. So at the moment, there is no meeting of SAARC foreign ministers at the sidelines of UNGA. Pakistan kept insisting, but other member nations did not agree to it. We know that on 15th of August, the Taliban took over Afghanistan by force, and we have also seen that it has not honored any of the conditions which were put on. It had agreed to in Doha deal, but Pakistan kept insisting about this, that Taliban should be represented or there should be an empty chair. But this was not agreed upon by other member nations of the SAARC country. So the meeting itself was cancelled.
And in more news concerning the Taliban, according to media reports, the Taliban government has written to the UN Secretary General seeking to address the UN General Assembly in New York, which is being held this week. Media reports say the Taliban has nominated their Doha-based spokesperson, Suhail Shaheen, as Afghanistan's UN ambassador. Taliban Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi made the request in a letter to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Monday. Muttaqi asked to speak during the annual high-level meeting of the General Assembly, which finishes on Monday. Welcome back. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is travelling to the United States today till the 26th, and he has a hectic schedule ahead, which includes bilaterals with President Biden, the first in-person Quad Leaders Summit, and a much-anticipated address to the UN General Assembly. The Prime Minister will also be meeting with US Vice President Kamala Harris for the first time, which will be followed by the Quad Summit. Both are scheduled on the 24th. On the 25th, the Prime Minister will be the first speaker at the UN General Assembly. Well, to talk more about the Prime Minister's trip, we're now joined by Michael Kugelman, Deputy Director and Senior Associate for South Asia Program, Seema Sirohi, columnist for the Economic Times, and Manju Seth, former diplomat. Thank you so much all for joining us. Michael, I'd first like to start with you and with the recent developments that have just taken place with the Taliban actually asking to be allowed to address the UN, and we've also had the SAARC foreign ministers meeting cancelled after Pakistan's insistence that the Taliban get a seat at the table.
Well, clearly not. According to the Taliban, it has never ceased being the legitimate government of Afghanistan since the end of 2001. So clearly it has to play the part of pretending that it is indeed the legitimate government. But I think it's just a ploy, nothing else. There's not going to be any type of Taliban participation in what happens at the UN, though clearly the Taliban will be a key focus of the conversations on many levels at the UN General Assembly, and certainly in many of the meetings that Prime Minister Modi has while he's here in the U.S.
No, absolutely, because for us, regional security is a big concern, and concerns also about extremism rising in the area.
Well, absolutely. I think that the issue of Afghanistan and more broadly the issue of terrorism threats will be a big focus of Modi's meetings with Biden and others as well, and for good reason, just because the combination of the U.S. withdrawal and the Taliban takeover really raises a lot of fears about terrorism threats in the broader region, particularly those threatening India. And this is something that's concerning for the U.S. as well. Even though it's left, it does intend to try to maintain this so-called over-the-horizon counterterrorism capacity. And so these issues certainly will be on the agenda, on many agendas, not just the meeting that Modi has with Biden, but a number of his other meetings as well, I'm sure. Not sure it would come up in the Quad discussions, but clearly it will be foremost on the agenda because both the U.S. and India will be concerned about the issue of Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed and how they could be further emboldened or inspired by what's happened in Afghanistan. These are things that worry both countries and both leaders, Biden and Modi.
Right. Seema Sirohi, the first meeting Prime Minister Modi is going to have in person with President Biden, and he'll be meeting the Vice President Kamala Harris as well. And lots on the program, as we spoke about Afghanistan, of course, terror, there's trade as well, and clean energy, all on the agenda during this trip.
Yes, it's a very substantive agenda. The bilateral meeting will be really important because I think Afghanistan will be on top of that list. The thing is, the U.S. is increasingly recognizing that the role that Pakistan has played and is continuing to play is not necessarily helpful. And whether it's Jaish-e-Mohammed or Lashkar-e-Taiba, there's Al-Qaeda that the Americans have to worry about, which, for them it's also a security threat. So in terms of Afghanistan and the security situation, I think both the US and India are on the same page. How to work together to mitigate the threats that are going to come from it. There's not much love lost for Pakistan right now. Biden hasn't even called Prime Minister Imran Khan because I think there is a sense that what's the point of talking to Imran Khan? He's not the one making any decisions in Pakistan. It's Pakistan Army that's in charge. So Biden is just basically ignoring Imran Khan, and the National Security Advisor of Pakistan, Moeed Yusuf, who visited Washington and tried very hard to sell the story that, you know, the Americans need to re-look at Pakistan, start anew, think about the relationship differently, etc., etc. He didn't really succeed in any of his objectives. And so, you know, the Pakistanis are reduced to sort of complaining and whining about why President Biden hasn't called Imran Khan. So it's not a very good position to be in.
All right. Let's talk about our other neighbor now, China. And Manju said that's another issue, you know, that's there during these meetings, the Quad meeting, the bilateral that the Prime Minister will have with the President. In recent days, we've seen, you know, the relationship between the US and China. There have been further tensions there, though the President just said that he didn't have any intention of starting a new Cold War with China.
Yes, that's true, because China is, again, as you see, everybody knows, on our line of actual control. There have been negotiations, but they are still very much there and increasing their, you know, their deep infrastructure. And so I think these are issues that are common to India. But of course, as you just mentioned, though the US does not want to start another Cold War, it cannot afford to start another Cold War, because it has a lot of its companies and others, its interests are intertwined very deeply in China, and they cannot completely de-link at the moment. So they will keep continuing to keep their interests in mind. But for India, of course, we have to, you know, while in the Indo-Pacific, we will engage with all the 4 Quad members, other 3 Quad members. We will, of course, need to keep our interests in mind, and keep in mind that China is our neighbor. And as mentioned by the other panelists, Seema and
Michael.
Yes. Wilson. No, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name, sorry.
Right, Michael, yes, Michael.
Michael, sorry. As mentioned by both of them, the terrorism is going to be a major issue for all of us. And China, by supporting, or even by, you know, informally recognizing
and engaging with the Taliban,
dealing with the Taliban, I think has sent the message that maybe it's going to be not that strong on terrorism. And that is a major concern for all of us, for the US, for India, for everyone else in the world.
Right. Michael Kugelman, your views on the China factor?
Well, China is always going to be looming over these types of discussions. Certainly, it's always looming over discussions within the Quad, even though I know that the 4 members are reluctant to publicly, specifically mention China in those contexts. But clearly, everything that the Quad is about is really focused on counterbalancing China, really through non-security means. So when the 4 Quad leaders sit down to talk, they'll be talking about things like pandemic cooperation and climate change and you know, developing emerging technologies, these types of things. All of this, in its own way, is meant to push back against what China has done. You know, and when the Quad had its virtual meeting back in the spring, they came out with this pandemic cooperation plan, which was meant to push back against China's vaccine diplomacy. But broadly speaking, certainly you're looking at 4 countries within the Quad that are all experiencing tensions with China at levels that have not existed for quite some time. But I think it's important to emphasize that, you know, the Quad really should not be seen as a security-related grouping, at least at this point. And yes, they have these military exercises every year, but you know, their focus areas reflect the 3 main working groups associated with the Quad, right? Climate change, technologies, emerging technologies, and then you know, cybersecurity, those types of things. This is very different from traditional hard security. These are the things that the 4 sides will talk about. But absolutely, China will definitely be hovering over everything. And certainly, when Biden and Modi meet, you know, we could be sure that that China will be right up there, along with the issues of Afghanistan and Pakistan, though I do think that some of the issues discussed at the Quad will spill over into the bilateral discussions that Modi has with Biden as well, just because clearly for both Biden and Modi, climate change is a major issue, priority, as well as things like cybersecurity and hacking and figuring out ways to work together to deal with that problem. We've heard U.S. officials in recent weeks talk a lot about how cybersecurity has become a major defense issue. So all of these issues will be on the table. China will be a part of it, but this is a broad, deepening relationship. So that means there's going to be a lot of different issues to discuss that include China.
Absolutely, there's so many different issues to be discussed. But hoping that we'll achieve something on the climate change front. Seema Sirohi, your views on that, because that's one thing that has been really talked about going into all these meetings.
Yes, I mean, that would be a preference for President Biden for sure, that he would like something concrete before the meeting in Glasgow. But the thing is, the West, for all its noise on climate change, hasn't put the kind of money that it promised, for clean technology, etc. So, and not to forget about lifestyle changes. So the thing is, if you're really serious about climate change, Western leaders have to begin addressing the issue of lifestyle. Why is it okay to have more than one car per family, let's say, and the use of energy, the consumption levels, they should all come down. Because when you look at per capita consumption and emissions, India is like really low in that sense. I know that it's no longer fashionable to talk about it, but at the bottom of it all, that is the issue. I'd like to say something about China and Quad. The thing is, Quad may not overtly mention the name China, but it's all about China, the military exercises, while, they're not like when allies do exercises, they are about increasing interoperability. They are behind the guise of doing disaster relief, etc. But what do you think it ultimately achieves? Should the need arise, these four navies can work together in the moment of crisis. So the Quad is very much covertly, I think, security
the China factor is there, right there, dominating. Thank you so much all. I'm completely out of time, but thank you so much for sparing your time to join us on the channel. Welcome back. Now, the post-mortem and last rites of the UP Akhada head who was found hanging on Monday will be held today in Prayagraj. A close aide of Narendra Giri, the head of a top religious body, the Bharatiya Akhada Parishad, has been arrested. The police filed an FIR against Anand Giri and two others have been detained for questioning. Kamal Khan and Alok Pandey report.
High-profile visits to Prayagraj by UP's top politicians to mourn the alleged death by suicide of Mahant Narendra Giri, the head of the Akhada Parishad, India's largest body of saints. Already a war of words has broken out on allegations of whether there was wrongdoing behind the death.
पूरा देश सच्चाई जानना चाहता है, साधु संत सच्चाई जानना चाहते हैं कि आखिरकार क्या हुआ है, किन परिस्थितियों में ऐसी घटना घटी।
कल की घटना को लेकर के बहुत सारे साक्ष्य कलेक्ट किए गए हैं। पुलिस की एक टीम जो यहाँ के एडीजी जोन, आईजी रेंज और डीआईजी प्रयागराज एक साथ मिलकर के टीम वर्क के साथ इस कार्यक्रम को आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं। एक एक घटना का पर्दाफाश होगा, दोषी अवश्य सजा पाएगा।
The UP police has arrested this man, Anand Giri, a protege of the deceased Akhada Parishad head till a few months ago, when he was expelled by the dead seer over allegations of fraud and financial mismanagement. Anand Giri had also accused Narendra Giri of fraud.
मैं सच या झूठ बोल रहा हूं, उसके लिए चाहे तो सरकार की मदद लेकर के नार्कोटिक टेस्ट भी मेरा कराया जा सकता है।
But withdrew his allegations.
हाथ पकड़ करके अपनी सारी गलतियों की सबसे पहले माफी मांगता हूं और क्षमा मांगता हूं यहाँ से।
This video from a patch up a few days later showed Anand Giri seeking forgiveness at the feet of his mentor. But the police suspect it was short-lived. The FIR against Anand Giri was filed by a colleague of Mahant Narendra Giri, the seer who died by suicide. It alleges that Narendra Giri had confided in this colleague multiple times that Anand Giri was harassing him, but it does not say how. 2 other disciples have been detained for questioning, Sandeep Tiwari and Adya Tiwari. Both of them stayed with Narendra Giri. The police said the arrests are based on a suicide note found near Narendra Giri's body, which mentioned Anand Giri and the 2 other people. The note said the 3 were harassing Narendra Giri. Police sources say the Akhada Parishad owns property worth crores in Prayagraj and elsewhere in the country, and financial matters could have played a part in the top seer's suicide. There was tension in the Parishad over who would succeed Narendra Giri, police sources have claimed. With elections early next year and with Hindutva emerging as a main campaign pivot for the BJP, there will be pressure on the UP government to come up with answers to the death of this prominent Hindu saint. With Kamal Khan, Rajesh Gupta and Nitin Gupta, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
Meanwhile, Anand Giri, who was arrested, has called it a conspiracy and alleged murder.
हम गुरु शिष्य के बीच में कभी कोई विवाद नहीं रहा। जिन लोगों ने सीधे तौर पे गुरुजी को ब्लैकमेल करके जो पैसा कमाया, उन लोगों की साजिश है और उस साजिश के तहत उनकी हत्या हुई है। उन्हीं की हत्या में जानबूझ करके मेरे नाम का आना ये षड्यंत्र का स्पष्ट रूप है।
Well, a look now at the COVID situation in the country, and although the COVID situation in Kerala seems to be slowly getting back under control, there are still pockets of concern. The R value, or reproductive rate of the infection, is over 1 in many key metro cities like Chennai, Mumbai, Kolkata and Bengaluru. This means that every person who is infected with COVID is passing on the infection to more than one person on average, increasing the spread. Data does suggest that Kerala and Maharashtra, the 2 states recording the highest number of cases, have an R value of less than 1. Well, let's go across to Meher for more. And Meher, also something that is reassuring is that India's overall R value has remained below 1. But the worry is also that we're now going into the festive season.
Yes, Kargi, exactly. So the point at which we are in this pandemic is that there are some regions which are still causes for concern. It's not all moving the same, of course. So, as you said, Kerala and Maharashtra, which are the top 2 states, they've been recording over 50% of all the active cases in the country, have actually shown a decrease in the R value. Their R value is under 1, which means that each person with COVID is passing it on to less than one person, which means the pandemic, the spread of it is under control. But if we look at smaller level data, if we look at cities, key metro cities are showing an R value of over 1. Delhi is the one city which is for sure showing R value less than 1. 0.92 is the R value in Delhi, which is a good sign. But Mumbai, the R value is 1.09. Pune is 1.04, but it is reducing. The data does suggest that the R value in Pune is falling below 1 now, which is good. But Chennai is 1.11, which is massive and very concerning. Kolkata is 1.04 and Bengaluru is 1.06. So all of these key metro cities, every person who gets COVID is passing it on to at least one more person. That means that the spread of the virus is going to increase. But as you said, states that were recording the highest number of cases have shown a fall in R value. Kerala and Maharashtra are showing a fall, but other key states still have an R value of over 1. Tamil Nadu has an R value of 1.02. Mizoram, which has been another state of concern, is showing an R value of 1.10.
All right, Meher, thanks so much for joining us with the latest there.